Good morning, everyone. My name's Stephen Bridle. I'm from New Zealand. Travelled up here. Hey, Declan. Travelled up here for the conference. We do something a little different to what you do. And I guess when I first put in the submission, I had a perception as to what research involved. That perception has been absolutely, totally blown out of the water. I think you guys must do the hardest job in the world. Based on what I've seen over the last day and a half, how research is actually done just astonishes me. The stuff that you have to deal with, it's incredible. I don't think I could turn up at your job. I really could. I don't know if I could last. You're either insane or just really good at what you do. But to deal with the technology changes that are coming, to deal with the sampling, to deal with the client's expectation, can we do a 30-minute survey on a phone? I'm guessing that comes from clients. Why can't we ask them 400 questions? Well, people just won't answer 400 questions. We do something slightly different, and it's sort of like a parallel universe. But before we get into that, I just need you to make one or two minor adjustments with me, okay? So we're not market research. We're market intelligence, minor difference. And we don't generally talk about customers. We talk about consumers. Okay, so if you can imagine a market being something like, I don't know, an Asian, say Hong Kong, downtown Hong Kong, people screaming, yelling, that's what a market is, right? We're on like a little step ladder, we're above that. We use a different data set, I'm going to go into that. Credit card and debit card spending. Now I know this is going to be a hot topic because of the privacy thing. We've been doing this since 1999. Okay, so we've got 15 years of experience. And if there's time, I know we're running late on time, I could share a story with you around privacy. But if you're okay with those two adjustments, we'll just kick into it, okay? So when we started in 1999, there was very little information about. We have the exact opposite problem now, right? We don't have info scarcity, we have infobesity. We have all this data, and in New Zealand, we just have names like Richie and Dan. So, apologise, Luciella, if I get your name wrong. 0.5% of the Twitter feed was like useful information. So 99.5% of that information, and to Steve's point around, it's useful for communications, etc. But there's a massive amount of data that's being collected that's actually completely irrelevant. Economic value has always been around scarcity. One of my favourite cars is an XK Jag 120. Sort of, I think 1948 was originally manufactured. You can buy a pristine one of those, 1955, so 60 years old. You could buy a pristine one of those for £165,000. Okay, it's a 60-year-old car. But because there's so few of them around, they have value. So, and that's the same with good information. So we've got a whole lot of we've got a whole lot of big information, and only a little bit of it's useful. And equally, I think, if you think about your life, really, life hasn't actually changed an awful lot. Now, it might seem a bit strange with all the technological challenges that we're having, but if you looked at all the brands that we've been through, you know what I mean? Like there was Jaguar Cars, there was KLM Airlines, Budweiser was just shown there before. Okay, most of the things that we are buying, the way we are living as people hasn't really changed an awful lot. So the challenge, I guess, is to try and explain what is happening. And that was the opportunity we saw. And we saw that back in 1999. So we went along to our local bank, which is the Bank of New Zealand. It's one of four, so I probably should say a little bit about New Zealand, small country, bottom of the world. Famous for a few things, hobbits, for rugby players, great wine, great coffee, and beautiful landscape. So if you ever get the chance to go down there, I thoroughly recommend you take it. Size-wise, in United States terms, it would be about the 25th state in the United States. So, sort of in the middle there. European-wise, roughly about the same size as Ireland, maybe a bit smaller than Scotland. The sample size that we deal with here, though, is around 750,000 people. Okay? So we have the spending behaviour of 750,000 people. It's all depersonalised. By that I mean we do not know their name, we don't know their address, we don't know their credit card number, we don't know their bank account number. Okay, so it's completely devoid of anything that would identify an individual person. And we have in its place a unique ID, so we're going to see a person, we get their age, we get their gender, and we get a broad geolocation as to where they live. And we do some really cool stuff with that. The bank's obviously very, very sensitive around their information being used for this particular purpose. Okay, and this is 1999, right? So the Data Privacy Commissioner at the time, we went and saw him, and he said, well, you haven't got any personal information, this isn't an issue, but it doesn't stop it keeping me awake at night because I know the sensitivity of the information that we're dealing with. In 15 years, we launched September 11, 2001, which, you know, was significant for a lot of reasons, certainly not our launch. And in that time, we've had no complaints about data. Okay? The guy who we were dealing with at the bank said, if you screw up our brand, I will kill you. And I don't think he meant the business. He had that tone of voice that sort of implied that he was actually going to kill me personally, right? So we've always been very, very sensitive to that. The data we collect has effectively a very simple transaction string. It starts with a person, they made a purchase on this day, at this time, for this value, at this merchant, in this location. And from that you can do some really, really interesting stuff. And I think the key thing, and it was touched on yesterday around context, different meaning of the word context in that situation, but all the stuff that's going on, when a research brief comes to you, someone's already made a decision, right? They've already decided that that's the thing that they need to figure out. And then you've got to deal with the technicalities of it. What we're doing is saying, well, hey, look, this is the way the market's moving. These are the sorts of things you need to find out. And I think really, you know, effectively I'm a salesman. Yet we've sort of morphed from being this like data company through to being a marketing consultancy firm. It's a role that can be filled by research firms, no question about it. So what we do with the information, though, is we take it back to first principles. And that's, all right, anyone watch Harry Potter? Yeah, okay, so there's, in one of them, I know it's probably sounding like all of them, but there's a scene where Harry's got to save the castle or the people from all manner of evil things. And he's not there, and as Dumbledore, who's the main guy for looking, you know, keeping the bad things away from him, has gone, right? Dumbledore is gone because Dumbledore received an owl, which was on the front page. He received an owl from London saying, you've got to come to London, right? Okay. That's market intelligence, a small piece of information that necessitated immediate action. So what we do is focus very much on that. What are the key things? What are the simple things that people are going to find useful? And then, you know, we need to look at that in a bit more detail. I'm going to show you three examples of that. The first one is the spending of 750,000 people. So I realise I might be building up a bit of an expectation here as to what 750,000 people spending looks like, but it looks something like this. Okay. On the bottom there we have the age of the cardholder, and on the y-axis we have the percentage of their spending that is done in a particular category, and then the colours denote the particular categories that money is spent in. And it was mentioned earlier about getting hold of young males. Okay, we have around 50,000, I think, in our database that you know, we're able to understand the spending of. We're not actually interested in a particular 18 to 24-year-old male, right? It's not really that interesting. The interesting thing is when you look at 18 to 24-year-old males as a group and how their behaviour differs from anyone else on that spectrum. Now, sorry, my mouth's going really dry. It's 10 o'clock at night in New Zealand and I should be in bed, but you can see through the waves there, okay? This is how our spending changes. And the blue bar is probably the easiest one to start with. I'm not quite sure why 15-year-olds, and we don't report on sort of under 18s anyway. But the hospitality spending is the blue bar. And you can see as you get older how your hospitality spending is overtaken a little bit by spending on your house. And if you're new to the UK, the phenomenon of homes that need to be fixed up it's amazing. I was watching TV, I think it was Monday night, and that was the only thing I could see, how people were fixing their houses. So I don't know what the problem is with houses in England, but they seriously need a lot of work. Or seem to, right? Okay. As we get older, that switches. Okay. Now every client that you have fits into that. Okay. Every client, every person you're sampling can fit into one of those little bars. Hey, we want to target 42-year-olds. Okay. Well, this is what 42-year-olds are doing right now. Okay. Well, but what about the 40-year-olds who are going to be 42-year-olds? Okay. Well, let's have a look at 40-year-olds. Okay. Well, let's look at the 44-year-olds that were 42 2 years ago and see what they've done subsequently. And maybe that's giving us a clue as to what the sort of things that a 42-year-old is thinking about. At this point, you need to have, the science that you guys offer. But as a starting point and as a context, and I guess this is only one sort of element. This is like the demand side. This is the customer. The fact is the market is dynamic and moves all the time. I mentioned before that we have some geographic information. This is actually a map. It's the sort of lower part of New Zealand. It's a bit hard to see if you haven't been there. It's even harder to see if you have. The colours there, you can see little pockets, right? Okay, and we had a speaker yesterday, Dr. Kelly. I think he went back to Ireland. And he was talking around catchment studies and how you could do catchment studies, right? So each of our consumers lives in one of those little pockets. This map's actually showing market share of liquor spending, I think it is, at one of those 2 stores that are denoted in the yellow box here, right? But it could be the proportion of sales. It could be the 18 to 24-year-olds. Hopefully not. We shouldn't be targeting those people. But the point is that this took us about half an hour to produce. Okay, so if you're trying to get someone to think about something, yes, you do. I mean, this is micro when we're talking about brand preference and individual cans and things like that. But in terms of solving real-life problems and understanding why is this store not going as well as that store, this data fulfills a really great function. Finally, the thing is, in terms of relevance, as I said at the start, the transaction is between a person and a particular store. Okay, so it's not any store, it's a store. And so that store will have competitors. Those competitors can be put together any way, shape or form that the client determines. Zane, I don't know if he's still here. He was a bit more energetic than I am, but he mentioned a continuum for McDonald's. Okay, we do similar work with McDonald's. And interestingly, using a different technique, we've come up with exactly the same answer that he showed. So sort of made me feel pretty good that we were maybe not so bad at what we do. This chart, though, shows them by time of day how different people came to spend at them, but not just them, their direct competitors, their indirect competitors, in fact, sort of casual dining, white tablecloth as well, so they can sort of understand what's actually happening, what's moving around in the marketplace. At this point, you can make different decisions around your media targeting, product placement, those sorts of things, right? Okay, at that point, we need to do some more research. This is sort of like that level above. We're looking at a little bit of a higher sort of level. Okay, so now unfortunately, you can't walk down to your local bank and say, can we please have your data? Well, you can. I don't think you'd get it, but you can try that approach. But actually, the challenges that you're facing, and in mobile, I talked briefly about information scarcity. There's always scarcity in a market, right? There's always a concentration. In the mobile market for communications, for advertising in the United States, 2 companies collect 57% of the revenue received from advertising. Okay, Google and Facebook, between them, pick up over half the revenue. You think of everybody that's advertising in mobile, there's 2 main players, right? And there's an expression, if it's free, you're the product. Okay, so if you think about when you're using Facebook or you think about when you're using Google, all right? These big Silicon Valley companies, and I saw one on TV last night. Sorry, I haven't been sleeping at all, right? So, you get to watch a lot of crazy TV. There's a new one called Itza in San Francisco, strangely, that produces quinoa made by robots. And the idea is that it's cheaper and you get healthier food. Now, I don't know how many people have eaten quinoa. I don't know if it's a massive demand for it. It sort of sticks in your teeth a bit. It's really good for you, but in Silicon Valley, there's no sort of end to where these things are going to, the boundaries that they're going to break down. And we see this here in London, Apple Pay, right? You can get on the metro using, the tube, with Apple Pay, right? So that your mobile can actually have a multitude of uses now. And if you start making payments, and in Australia, the banks have decided no, Apple Pay won't go on phones because they can see that that's a bit of the thin end of the wedge for them. So banks are under pressure as well, as much as we may or may not like our bank. They face challenges as well. They're looking for value-added products. They're looking for different ways of servicing the needs of their customers. Okay, it's a great opportunity if you're a research firm to say, hey, look, there's these guys in New Zealand, they do this. It's all depersonalised. We don't hurt anybody. That sounded really sad, but it is a great opportunity coming up, I'm sure. Click. And I think the opportunity, in summary, is from all the stuff that I heard, there's a lot of, it comes down to you. Okay, you have to react to what the client wants, and this is an opportunity to maybe get a little further forward in the decision-making process. And I'm happy to answer the question on privacy, which is about to be asked. Thank you.